This episode of Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico is brought to you by Baby Loves Tacos and their two outstanding locations in the Pittsburgh, PA area. The original hotspot in Bloomfield and their second location in Millville, right over the 40th Street Bridge. Baby Loves Tacos, where everybody eats. Before we bring our guest out for this week's show, let's listen to a tune from the recently released album by Geoff Palmer and Lucy Ellis. The album's called Your Face is Weird, and it features today's guest, which you'll be hearing the interview that we did shortly, and this song is called Crash.
I like to play guitar, but you play better by far. So we hang around and we try to find a sound.
Yeah, babe, we looked everywhere, and then we find it's there. Like a breath of fresh air, take your time and think of words that rhyme. I like to play guitar.
I like to play the drums. You find a beat and it's fun. I'm a little rough, but I play good enough.
A little better than you.
Yeah, hit the drums
But you don't
alright.
think it's true.
No way, baby, that's not
You
right.
got a steady beat, but I can use some fills. I like to play the drums. And if you feel it, you can add a melody. If it works and everything fits alright,
We can feel out of sight.
if you feel it, you can add a harmony. I've been looking for someone to perform with, make some noise with, find the right chords with. When I'm with you, I hear the crash of the music. I hear 1,000 guitars. I'm in the heart of the city, and you're my only star.
I like to play the bass. You feel the rhythm and pace. It's not so hard, but harder than it looks.
If you like cool little hooks,
Play me some cool
you can
little
learn
hooks.
it in books.
No, can't learn it in books.
In case you're wondering, Lucy, tell 'em why.
Yeah, baby, I like to play bass.
And if you feel it, you can add a melody. If it works and everything fits alright,
We can feel out of sight.
if you feel it, you can add a harmony. And if you feel it, you can add a melody. If it works and everything fits alright,
We can feel out of sight.
if you feel it, you can add a harmony.
Welcome to Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo. Please welcome to the show my old buddy and the pride of joy of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Mr. Geoff Palmer. How are you, Geoff?
Hey, I love that intro. I'm doing great, man.
Well,
Thanks so much for calling me up. It's been a while. It's nice to hear your voice.
Now, does anyone ever call you Geoff Useless anymore?
Not. I mean, some people do from like the old circle, or like friends that I met like in the days of playing with the Queers and stuff, or know me from those records. But moving forward, not many people do.
Okay, so
I don't have any issues with it at all.
Oh, good, because I know Mono Man from the Liars doesn't like to be called Mono Man anymore. He only likes to be called Jeff Connolly. So I didn't want to start saying Geoff Useless and upset my old buddy, because some people change their name, and that's the way it is.
That's cool. Yeah, man, I guess I shouldn't call him Mono Man, but yeah, big fan of his band. I'd always wanted to do a song called like Mono Man in the digital world, and kind of like write it about his plight in life of just wanting to stick with only analog and the way he has to do stuff in today's world. I thought it would be funny, but then I'm like, he might get really pissed. I don't know.
It was funny because I had Rick Hart from Ace of Hearts record on, the guy who's produced most of the Liars records, and I said, "How come?"
And the Real Kids stuff.
Yeah, Real Kids, Nervous Eaters, so Neighborhood, so many bands. And I asked him, I said, "How come Jeff doesn't like being called Mono Man anymore?" And with a complete straight face, Rick goes, "I think he's into stereo now."
Yes, that's awesome.
So one thing I found out about you, and you might have told me this a while ago, because we were hanging out back around 2010, 2011. We used to see you a lot back then. I didn't realize you were born in Wakefield, Mass. Did you ever tell me that?
I don't know if that ever came up, but it's true. Yeah, I was born in Wakefield, Massachusetts. And actually, funny thing, the drummer from the Guts, my first kind of like real punk band, was born in the same hospital too, but we had no idea until years later.
Because I always tell everyone the two most famous people from Portsmouth, New Hampshire are Geoff Palmer and Al Barr. So I've been given the wrong story for a while. I didn't know you were born in Mass, but it doesn't matter.
Well,
man.
I was born there, but I'm a Portsmouth native in all aspects. Like I moved up and lived in Portsmouth from, a little kid on, like kindergarten up. So Portsmouth's my home. That's my blood.
That's what I figured. So let me ask you some stuff here. So it seems like you haven't missed a beat during the pandemic. You seem like you're as active as you've always been. Tell us about what the last year has been like for you and how you were able to incorporate projects into it with everything that was going on.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, everybody, plight and struggle. I'm sure you deal with it as well. And being a music scene, I've just been doing music for so long. Like, I have a quote real job and stuff too, but it's like music's just like my hobby and passion. I don't know really what I do without it. So I guess luckily, I'm kind of like even outside of touring and shows, I've always been really into like working in the studio and the writing side and helping bands like produce songs and everything. So but a lot of bands and people that I wanted to work with and stuff I would want to do even for myself, everyone's busy, so no one's schedule would line up. Like someone's like, "Oh, I could do it this month." It's like, "Oh, well, that month the drummer is busy filling in for this other band." It made everything harder to schedule. So then, you just look at the positives, and all of a sudden, I just started chatting with tons of music friends more often because everyone is just home doing nothing. So it made it easier to start being like, "Hey, well, let's actually work on that song that we've been talking about. Here's some demos." Just start passing stuff around, and it's easy to get drummers that you want to work with because they're not on the road. So I just kind of was like, well, let's just do it. So I just started kind of moving forward and keeping busy, finished up my new record and then a whole record of songs with Lucy Ellis. She's Australian and was in this really cool band called the Spazzys that were really big over there. Then she moved to London and has this new band, but I played a festival with her in the Netherlands, and that's where we connected. And we both love the kind of weird, not obscure, but just different kind of more mellow, like 60s rooted pop tunes. So we just got together and I started tracking music. I send it to her. She'd sing. We'd FaceTime and write songs together. And then I'd track them here with my drummer, send her tracks. She would add stuff. And it was awesome. And it's been great. Sometimes I'm like, I can't believe the year's gone by. Other people have been super bored. And I'm like, in the middle of like 4 different projects.
Yeah, you're amazing.
So
I love your positive attitude, by the way. You've actually jumped ahead on me and answered some things I was going to ask you, which I figured that once you got on a roll, I wasn't going to stop you. But you've always been a really positive person. That's what I've always loved about you, you know, is like, and you still sound exactly the same. So it doesn't surprise me that you were able to get things accomplished while we were even going through these rough times. I did play right before the interview started, Crash from Your Face Is Weird, and I'm going to talk to you about that. But first, I want to go back a little bit. I want to go all the way back to your roots. It's just kind of a complicated question, but maybe you can break it down for me. What was it like for you in your early punk rock days when you were playing first with the Queers, then briefly with the Nobodies, and then your band, The Guts, which you have a great body of work with? I think that's probably one of your longest running bands. Maybe the connection caught up to that now. But talk to me and our audience about those early days and how you got involved with the Queers and then how it transitioned into you working with the Nobodies and then your own band, The Guts.
Sure, man. So, yeah, I mean, like growing up in high school, like I was kind of played in different, you know, bands early in high school and even before in like 8th grade and stuff. But then, of course, I found like the Ramones, and then, you know, I was kind of, and then Nirvana was out, so I was like, oh, this is a bit of a changer. And then it was harder and harder to find people that I really wanted to play with, you know, so you had a small pool of musicians you could like work with that were on the same page. Other people played and they were better musicians, but they wanted to do like Red Hot Chili Pepper stuff, or which, you know, I'm not saying is bad. It just wasn't.
I can say it's bad if I want, right?
You can say it's bad. Yeah, I mean, I can too, but like, I don't judge somebody just based on that. You know, people can have a wide variety of taste, and that's healthy. But anyway, so I started this, like, you know, just playing in little punk bands. I think the very first one was called like the Twits. Then I started this group I was played drums in called the Useless Fucks. And we did a couple 7-inches, and they started getting really good reviews in like Maximum Rock and Roll. Like Tim Yohannan put us in his like top 10 list for the year. And we started selling all these like 45s and doing little tours. And I just kept, you know, meeting more people and learning about, you know, the punk rock community, and, you know, picking up zines from local areas whenever I tour, and then always making sure to keep in touch with those people from those zines and finding out about other bands and sending in tapes and 45s of my stuff. And, you know, you're just building that cool underground network and keeping those connections
DIY,
going.
the whole DIY thing, yeah.
Yeah, and I still get excited thinking about that, and like even try and use that same kind of work pattern even in today's more digital world. It's even easier, you know, but like just every small step is cool, and everybody that wants to, whether it's running a label or doing reviews or doing radio shows, like you do anything, is just helping, you know, high tides raise all ships kind of thing. So it's just like help everybody and do it. But yeah, so the Useless Fucks. So then, of course, I was like in Portsmouth, and there wasn't a giant like punk scene, but the Queers were from town, so everybody knew like the Queers, and obviously in Albar. I was 17, and I was at this club called the Elvis Room.
Right, famous place.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was there all the time. I'd skip out on class from high school and go down and get coffee and sit around. Yeah, Joe King was there one day, and I was just like talking to him. I was like, "When are you guys playing again?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't even know. Like, you know, the drummer's sick, the bass player just quit." And so I was just like, "Oh, well, if you ever need a bass player, let me know." He's like, "What, you play bass?" And I was like, "Yeah," but I didn't actually play bass. I didn't own a bass or anything. And, but I was just like, "Well, I definitely don't play drums, so I'm just gonna stay bass and, you know, whatever." He's like, "You gotta try stuff with my." And like 2 weeks later, when I get home from school, my dad's like, some guy calling himself Joe Queer called for you. And I was like, haha. And I thought it was one of my friends like pranking me, because I had told a few friends that I had said that. So then I looked up the phone number because this is back in phone book days, and I knew where Joe's parents lived in Northampton, and I knew that he had been staying there. So I looked it up, and the phone number was his parents' phone number. And I was like, that feels weird. So I called him back, and it was him. He's like, hey, yeah, remember? You gave me your number at the office, and they could play bass. So I need this EP recording. I got the songs together. You going to do it? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I had to like borrow a bass and like start playing bass. And then like a month or two later, we were in the studio recording. And then just leveraging out from that, because then I started to get to do tours and just meeting higher like level people, not like giant stuff, right? But it's definitely an echelon or two up the ladder or whatever the word is. So then I just, used the same thought pattern of meeting people and making connections at, the next rung up, and just use that to keep moving forward in my own projects as well. And it was just great getting in that setting, because all of a sudden I'm working with like engineers and producers and meeting people from labels that worked with all these bands that I own all the records for and loved. So I was like super happy to kind of get, my foot in the door in that circle. And that really helped.
Plus the Queers were like a popular band. So you must have,
right.
You played on like 2 records with them, right?
Yeah, I did like a couple EPs and then the Punk Rock Confidential album and then a bunch of different tours. Like I went to Japan, like Canada, like Mexico, like all kinds of like weird little quick runs.
And you weren't even 18 yet, right?
When the record came out, I was 18, but when I first started kind of tracking the songs, I wasn't 18, I was 17.
Wow. That's incredible. So then you were briefly in the Nobodies after that.
So that's the same thing. Yeah, the Nobodies, they were on Hopeless Records, which the Queers were on. They all knew Joe. So I had played shows like with the Queers and the Nobodies were playing. I just became friends with them. And then they had a record that came out and something happened to one of their guitar players. He couldn't tour for it. And they were like, hey man, do you want to play second guitar? I was like, hell yeah. So I just flew out to Colorado and met those guys, and we did this big tour with Guttermouth, who were a pretty good band at the time.
Very good band.
Yeah, totally. So it was just another one of those, you never know where you're going to end up, and you're not going to ever end up anywhere if you say no to things or don't just like take the chance. I didn't really know those guys, but I knew that we knew a bunch of mutual people and that they were a hardworking band, and I liked their music. And we had hung out and had beers, a few times at shows and stuff, but I was like, what the hell? Like, how bad could it be to, be in a band with these guys for 1 month? If it sucks, then after the tour, don't talk to them again. But as it turned out, they were awesome, and we continued to be friends for a long time.
And so that leads us up to the Guts, which pretty much was your first band that you were kind of like in charge of what was going on, pretty much, right?
Right. So then, yeah, I've been like doing tours pretty much for a year straight with the Nobodies, using Colorado as my home base and just flying home to see friends and family every now and then. Then they were kind of taking like a longer break. They had some like stuff going on and figuring out what they wanted to do for the next record. So I came home, but I had kind of been, writing songs in my head and just on my own, just because I always kind of noodle around with stuff like that. And then I got home and I just wanted to keep playing. I'm like, well, these guys aren't doing anything. Time to, get some shows together. So I came home. That's when I kind of put together the Guts with my buddy Nate Doyle and then Rick, who we had played around in high school bands together. And then it was fairly easy getting the band up and going because I had already met all these people. So it was easy to make a phone call and be like, hey, I got this new thing going, and have more of a chance of having someone be, wanting to review it or get me in touch with somebody else from a label. Just because, handshake agreements and stuff that you make over time. So it was fairly easy getting the band up and running and be able to get some decent shows and a record out, which was kind of cool. But that's because of all the legwork, for the previous years of networking to get it going. And I guess I want to say too, I don't like to say it, but I guess it's, quality production and songwriting in a way too, which
Excellent,
I take pride
really.
in, and I think makes the record stand up over the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to the Let It Go album last night, and I was like, this is just as good as like Green Day or any of the other bands that, you know, had that whole like poppy punk thing going on. I mean, the Guts were like a fantastic band, man. And you know, I know you did that for what, about 6 years or something?
Yeah, we did it for like a while, but I think like with the Let It Go record, it was just, we all knew like what we wanted to do. The songs were kind of coming natural. We had good chemistry. We had played a bunch of shows, so we were like really warmed up. So like the writing and rehearsal for that record was really easy, and just looking back, like really fun. We were just all like laughing and having a good time. And I think that comes out in it as well. And just the little skills and stuff you pick up over time from recording with other bands that are bigger than you, and just songwriting tricks. Everything just kind of like fell into place, and the label sent us out to Wisconsin, and we went to Butch Vig's Smart Studios.
That was awesome, man. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
So that we didn't get to meet Butch. He wasn't around. We worked with a different engineer, this guy Justin Perkins. He's now actually a pretty well sought after mastering engineer. He just did like the new Replacements box sets and weird like larger hip hop records. So he was the engineer for it, but it was super fun. We just drove out in the van, and then we were at the studio just living there for the week, and we went in and we were like rehearsed. So we got the basic tracks done super quick. Then we had all this extra time to like play around with like layering other guitars and backing vocals and trying little piano stuff, and just we weren't in any rush because we got the basic simple 3-chord punk songs tracked in like 2 days, right? So then we had like 5 days to mess around.
That's fantastic.
It was super fun, and like and then over time, it's a fun, I guess, a different, probably not one of your questions, but the art of making records, I guess, in a way, has slightly changed. I miss, because we used to just go in and be in a studio for X amount of time, and that was like what you did, and you left with a record. And now things, at least in like my circles, have kind of changed, where you go in, you can like kind of get like the drum tracks done and maybe the bass. Then sometimes the guitar players will like do a rhythm guitar, and then people are taking it home and doing other stuff here and other stuff there, and there's all these other sessions.
To explain this better to people that are listening, you're saying that you would go in as a whole band and do it live before, and now it's broken apart. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, we would go in and like everyone would be there, right? And
right.
You'd just kind of be living at a studio for a week or 2 weeks, and your life was making the record. Where now, I think, at least in the smaller scale stuff like we do, bands will go into a really good studio, track drums, and maybe rhythm guitar or whatever, and then the bass player will kind of do the bass later on, or at home, and send tracks in, or like tracks start getting sent around, which there's pluses and minuses to it. And now I'm just accustomed to kind of this weird broken up recording schedule.
But you don't really love that though, do you? You'd rather be doing it the other way, right?
I definitely do miss the camaraderie of everyone just being together. Even like, the drummer staying for the whole week and a half or 2 week recording session, even though their parts are done in the first 4 days. They're a member in a group and a part of the team and family. So having them there is just good for the chemistry, as opposed to just them taking off. So I think, just kind of looking back over the trajectory of the way recordings that I'm a part of have been done, I do kind of miss that. But then it also opens up these other possibilities that it's so much easier to have other people work on the record with you. Instead of flying people in, you can just send a track to somebody, and a lot of people have pretty decent little home setups to at least be able to do a guitar solo or a quick backing vocal on something.
I love that.
I totally digressed, but that just popped in my head.
It's okay. I love that you're still young, because you're still really young, but you have like an old school attitude. But you've actually adapted to the new way of doing things, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to eventually, right? Because of like it's practical, and just there aren't like budgets, like labels aren't putting up money to be in the studio for 2 weeks anymore.
Yeah,
So
I know.
You're kind of like, you're like, well, okay, this budget will get us like 3 days at a really good studio, so we'll get in huge like drums, right? Getting a good drum sound super important. So get the drums done, and then you kind of start figuring out how to get the other stuff done.
It's funny because
money you have left.
I have an interview coming out. By the time this comes out, I'll already be out with Ruthie Morris from the band Magnapop from Atlanta, Georgia. And she was saying the same thing. She's like, well, when we recorded with Bob Mould, we stayed at his house for a week. And then when we recorded with Michael Stipe, we were at his house for a week. And, and then we went with Gazer X, and we were at his house for a week. That doesn't happen anymore. Now it's kind of like you're piecing things together. But the music still... I'm also a fan of analog more than digital. I like the 2-inch tape machines. I don't know about you. But
yeah.
But, there's one down here at New Alliance, and a lot of people don't use it because, it costs like $350 to get a tape. But the old school way, I still am a fan of that,
Oh, definitely. Exactly. I am too. Like, if I could do it that way all the time, I would. But then you have to just look, at, what's practical, how it's going to happen. And then at the end of the day, it's about getting your songs like well constructed, well produced, and then also out too,
right,
for people to be able to hear and to see you can like move on to the next project kind of thing. So try and take the best of both worlds and mix them together until you find something that works.
This is a good segue because now we're going to move ahead. I remember when I met you, it was around like 2010, 11. You were doing like a cow punk kind of thing. You kind of changed.
Yeah.
And then I was at, this is amazing, the first Connection show. I remember I was there. It was at, what's that place up near the college there? Oh, geez, it's a big bar up in Durham area.
Oh, maybe the Stone Church or something.
I can't remember the name of the room. I'm sorry. But I saw the first Connection gig. You were going to do a solo show. I had put a show together. And then you said, is it okay if my new band, The Connection, plays? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Now, The Connection ended up doing a lot of stuff, and you guys worked together for a while. Is the band actually still happening, or is it on the break, or what's going on with The Connection?
Okay, so I'll get into that. And once again, I just wanted to say it's funny because in my music room, like I have my basement like built out where I just keep all my stuff, but I have framed hanging on the wall the very first ever Connection interview, and it's / review, and it's with you. It's from the Yankee Shopper, July 14th, 2011.
Yeah, I remember that.
Steve Ricardo. I have it in a frame up on the wall.
I remember that. Rock and Roll Road Stories. It was a column I was doing regularly back then. I totally remember. Wow, yep. Thank you for framing that.
It's actually Rock and Roll Buzz. It has a little bumblebee flying.
Oh yeah, but, I did the Rock and Roll Buzz column. I forgot about that. Wow, you remember. You have stuff that I don't even remember. But
yeah.
It was good it's good to get framed every once in a while.
So that band started just Brad
Marino.
Yep, he had been in a punk band called the Rydell's. We used to play with the Guts, and the Guts were just kind of. I think Rick had a kid at the time, and Nate moved down to Boston, so like we just weren't kind of like doing too much right then. So Brad was in town. I used to run into him all the time. We just started hanging out, and like he and I both had like a mutual like love for like Dave Edmunds and Nick Lowe and Rockpile and more of the stiff records kind of stuff
right.
that the guys in the Guts like, but it wasn't like the wheelhouse for what that band was. So Brad and I just kind of started writing songs, and it was super fun just kind of exercising this other writing style. And I didn't expect fans of like my bands and my previous bands or his previous bands to really like it. So that was also kind of neat, because we're like, okay, we have this new thing that, you know, might have a little bit of a crossover, but
more garage rock. It was more of a garage rock band than the previous punker bands. Yeah.
Yep. So then, yeah, we just started doing it, and then it's cool because then Little Steven from the Little Steven's Underground Garage and Wicked Cool Records and stuff started picking up the tracks and playing them on his show a lot, and that just opened up this whole other door to just all kinds of different shows and a different audience that I hadn't been able to ever be in front of or network through previously. So that was just insane. So that was so fun. And then we did like 3 albums of original stuff and a covers record, and we toured Europe 3 times and all kinds of cool fests throughout the US.
This is why it was so hard for me to try and pick out songs to play from your discography, because it's so huge that I was like, I don't know which band they even play. You know, it's like you've got so many different. I'm going to talk about more of them too, but you are like one of the hardest working guys in show business. There's no doubt about it. I mean, seriously.
I mean, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I do like, it does feel good, I guess. It's nice if other people see it that way. Like sometimes I need to like step back and look and be like, whoa, I have done a lot. Cause I'm always just like, I'm super proud of everything that I'm on, but I'm also kind of like, once a song's like done and recorded and then we get the record out, before it's out, like I'm already working on a new one. Not because I don't care about the old one. I do care about it, but it's kind of like out of my hands, right? Like once you deliver the masters to the label and take the pictures for the record, my job's kind of done. So then it's like, okay, my desk is now clean. I need to start piling it up with papers again and start something new. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what to do to keep myself sane.
You're a machine, dude. You're a machine. Listen to this paragraph that I wrote down here. I wrote, you also put out a lot of solo stuff on various labels. You're like a machine. Plus, there's the new Trocaderos, Kurt Baker, Wimpy and the Medallions with the great Wimpy Rutherford, who I believe was the first singer of the Queers, right?
That is true, yep.
And now you got a band called Cupid, which I haven't even gotten to yet. I don't even know how I'm going to get to that. I'm still trying to catch up. How are we supposed to keep track of you in all these projects, man? It's like amazing. I mean, yeah. You're on so many records, man, that it's like you are just, you're a machine, man. I mean, I don't know what else to call you.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it either. And yeah, I guess that's the thing. Like, yeah, there's a lot of projects, but they all come in like in different waves, and I get in different mindsets when I'm doing them. And none of them are supposed to be like, not purposely, but they're not all for the same audience, right? So it's always
they're not.
Oh, cool. Like this is kind of, exploring this territory. I guess they all fit under the same umbrella. It's not like jumping around, but it's just I meet over time different musicians that like I respect and different songwriters that I respect, and they're all slightly different, but it's fun working with all of them. And you're like, well, this is this song doesn't work for the connection, but like this would be great for this other thing. So then there's that whole like new Trocadero kind of thing, and like and then like doing the Kurt Baker records is super fun because Kurt's like one of my best friends. You
guys are great together, man. You and Kurt, no doubt about that. You and Brad too, Yeah, it's like we're all like the same but slightly different. So it's neat just seeing somebody else's point of view on a song and where it should go, or a harmony, or any of the production type stuff. Different people bring out different qualities in it, I think. Before we talk about the project that you did with Lucy, because that is just phenomenal. Tell me about you've worked with a lot of different producers. You've worked with a lot of different labels. It seems like a lot of stuff lately you've been doing with Lou over at Rumbar Records. Talk to me about the different producers and the different labels and who you like working with and why who you like to go back to and that whole process, because you seems like you have a lot of choices. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess the choices come down to like kind of what the project is and then who it is. But I will say, you mentioned Lou, and like Lou and Rumbar Records is, I mean, you want to talk about somebody with a passion and a work ethic.
Yeah.
That guy, it's like every week there's some new release from, like, sometimes it's a band I've heard of, sometimes it's a band I haven't heard of, and I'm like, how does he even have the time to like listen through and do all this? It's crazy, but it's all good, right? Because he's just so into like giving bands a chance and working. So I love working with Lou, and Lou's great for like, it's weird, like, that CDs are still really popular in some corners of the market, right? And Lou like has that market locked down. So
right.
No matter what project is, I usually talk to Lou about the CD pressing of it. Because then there's this label I've been working with that I also love, but they focus more on vinyl. They're called Stardom. They're from the Netherlands, and he's like a European Lou. It's the same thing, but it's
oh God! There's another Lou. That's hilarious.
in a really good way. All the good.
I love Lou, man. Qualities. So you don't have to.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
But like, you know, vinyl, there's for the pressing side of it and the distribution, and if you're doing it professionally and correctly, you know, there's more cost to it. So he's not like every week putting out a band, but he does small, you know, less bands, but he does it really, really well, and only bands he likes to work with. So I've been so happy and fortunate that I got involved with him. And he also knows Lou too. So when you team the two of them up together for a release, it's really cool. And like, they're just super passionate about it and, you know, take it and run with it.
Yeah. I admire the way that you've been able to like juggle, I guess juggle's a good word, all these different projects, and none seem to ever interfere with the other. Like, I've never heard anyone say a negative thing about Geoff Palmer or Geoff Useless for that matter. You know, you work well with a lot of people, and I really admire that. Now, the last thing, I think the most recent release, I don't know if anything has come out with Cupid yet, but the last release I think that you put out was your record Your Face Is Weird with Lucy Ellis. You started to talk about it at the beginning of the show. I am fascinated by that project. There's two originals and then there's a bunch of great covers on it, and you guys seem to sing together so well. That also came out on Rumbar Records. Go back a little bit, because I know you mentioned at the beginning you guys met, I think you said, in Australia?
Oh, we met in Rotterdam, actually, and we played this festival on a boat together with another band called the Yum Yums, who are the
I've heard of them.
European band, too. So it was me, Lucy and the Rats, and then the Yum Yums. But yeah, so that, I'm super pumped that you like that project. That was definitely one that, like, I was like, well, I don't know, you know, we'll see who likes this or not, but I really like it. And the vinyl is on Stardom, and then Lou did the digital and the CDs. So, which is so cool. And I've been so happily surprised with the response from it. People seem really into it, because I was like, it's really different from either Lucy's stuff or my stuff, and it's more mellow. And, you know, sometimes you run that line and people being like, oh, I thought this was going to be punk or something, and it's not, and that's fine. But that was the very beginning of COVID. I had always, like, even from back in the Guts days, I had wanted to do that John Prine song, In Spite of Ourselves. And it never flowed with the Guts, and we never really knew the right kind of girl to ask to do it, and it would have been really out of place. So I just wanted to do it forever. And I'm a huge fan of Lucy, and then after we met at that festival, we just like kept in touch, and we're both on Stardom Records. So it was kind of easy, and I just like wrote to her one day, and I was like, hey, like, you're just at home, all her shows have been canceled, I was at home and I was like, I've always really loved this song and I want someone to do it with. Would you want to do it? She's like, are you kidding? Yes, hell yeah. So I just like I just did an acoustic guitar version of it with my vocals and sent it to her, and she did a scratch of her vocals. And I was like, oh, this is totally going to work. So then my buddy Zach and he plays drums. We got together and actually tracked the drums and guitars and then sent her like the actual backing track. And then she did her vocals. I did mine. And we were like, this is really cool. So then we did another song. And then we had two, and we were like, oh, this is great. And then Stefan from Stardom was going to do it as a 45. But by the time we had sent it to him and he agreed to do the 45, Lucy and I had already been like FaceTiming and having like, cocktail hours, like virtually writing guitars while we're drinking wine together, and wrote that song Swim.
Great song. I've played that on my sister radio show twice already. I love that song, Swim. It's fantastic.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, that came out so weird because I was on my friend Kurt Baker. Him and his girlfriend called to wish Jackie. Was it Jackie's birthday? I forget what. I think it was maybe my birthday.
Hi, Jackie. I love Jackie, by the way. Jackie's awesome. Hi, Jackie.
Yeah, I love Jackie too.
I know
great.
You do.
So Jackie has blue eyes. So Kurt's girlfriend said like, "Oh, I want to swim in your eyes," and I was just like, "That's a song." So like, I just came up with that little like, "I want to swim in your eyes."
Wow.
And I was like, I'm not sure what to do with this. So then I showed it to Lucy and told her like the thought behind it. And she's like, "Oh my God, I have this verse that would fit perfect." And she kind of reworked her verse. And then I showed it to Kurt, and Kurt came up with this melody just right on the spot for what turned into the chorus. But then Zach, the drummer, wrote the lyrics for the chorus. So all of us just like within a day finished off the song.
That's a collaboration. That's what I would call a real collaboration. I'll tell you, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it was just super natural, and it was. I think it like for that point that like. You can virtually, without being in the same room, you can still get that chemistry that I miss of being in the same room with people when you're like actually just like free flowing and like doing FaceTime and, kind of you see people's like excitement or disappointment. Like when you see the look on people's faces and you can judge it more, if something's going to work. But so yeah, we did that song and then we're like, well, let's keep going. And then before you knew it, we had like 6 more songs, and we were like, then we're all done. And then it turned into it's a 10-inch vinyl release with the 8 songs, like 4 on each side, and it's on CD. So we were like, wow, this is really cool. And we like totally did it just because of COVID. So, I mean, not that there's any positive in COVID, but if you always need to look at the positive and the negative,
like you always are, you're Mr. Positive. That's what I mean. That's your deal. That's your deal, dude. How did you come up with the title? Your Face is Weird, because I love that title.
Lucy it was a line in a song that Lucy wrote, and we were trying to come up with titles for it, and I was like just joking. I was like, dude, your face is weird. Like, wouldn't that be a funny button to make, like, for the record? And then she's like, well, if it would be a funny button, could it be a funny record title? And I was like, I think it would be really funny. So we just we went with that. We didn't know what the label would say. And then Stefan was just like, yeah, great.
Well, it's magical, man. It's magical. Hey, I feel like I could talk to you for like a long, long time, but I gotta cut it a little short here, unfortunately. But I want to thank you, man, for being a great guy, first of all, because we've been friends for about over 10 years now, and every time I've ever reached out to you, you've been like really cool, and we haven't been able to do anything together, but now we are. Right now we are. So that's
we are
cool.
Right now, man.
And I'm trying to keep track of everything that you're doing. It's not easy, my friend. I mean, I have a lot of catching up to do here. I mean, you've got a lot of projects, and I'll be honest with you, I have not listen to enough of the new Trocaderos or the stuff other things you did with Kurt. You know, I got to get caught up, and I want to play more of it on my show. But I'm gonna as soon as we go here, I'm gonna play "Let It Go" from the Guts. But I wanted to thank you very much for coming on the show, and I wish you nothing, you and Jackie, nothing but the best for whatever you guys do in the future. And you know, just keep the rock coming, man, because you're one of my favorite rock dudes, man. You never let us down. You like just continually putting out great product, and I appreciate that.
Oh, dude, I appreciate having people like you in the corner to be able to have a public soundboard to talk about all the random projects that I do. It's super fun. And I respect that, you know, not just for me, but in general, you're one of those, you know, you're a voice for a lot of, you know, bands, and you have an audience that listens to you that's like, oh, I've never heard of this. I'll check it out. And like, that's just what the whole DIY ethic of punk and music and everything should be. It's the, you know, music community. It's good. Everyone helping each other.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Every avenue. So thanks for what you do too.
Thank you for the kind words, man. Hopefully we can get you on the show again down the road. But for now, you take care of yourself and keep the rock coming, man. I'll keep playing it. You keep doing it. I'll keep pushing it.
Hell yeah, dude. It sounds like a deal.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right.
She's coming around again. It's bringing me down again. We're on and off and I can't make it stop. She knows just how to move, to slide into my mood now. We're on and off and I can't make it stop. Let's let it go. Let's let it go. Let's let it go. She knows just what to say to brighten up your day now. It's on and off and I can't make it stop. Let's let it go. 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 Let it go. Let it go. Let's let it go. Let's let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
We had to play one more song from the Geoff Palmer discography, which is like enormous. He's got so many different bands and records out. The song you just heard was "Let It Go" from the album of the same name by the Guts, who I'd have to say are probably one of my personal favorite bands of Geoff's, although I really do like this record he did with Lucy Ellis as well. And, you know, it was great having Geoff on the show, and once again, thank you to him. We have a lot of great shows coming up, including interviews with Curtis Casella from Tang Records, Bob Mayo from Wargasm, and a really special show with our old friend James McAndrew from Milquetoast and Company. And I was talking to well-known Boston fashion designer Sibylline Siriano, who's opening an art gallery in the South End of Boston. She's going to come on some of my shows, maybe more than one. We're talking about it. And I think having James and Sibylline on the same show together will be truly fantastic. So naturally, we're very excited about all of these upcoming cool guests. And please also check out the Twisted Rico radio show, which is now available everywhere, so you can listen to a bunch of great songs from the Twisted Library every week. And As I always say, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Twisted Rico. And if you want to reach out to me, as a lot of people have been doing, which I love, and sending me music especially. I love getting music. If you're in a band or a label and you have music, twistedrico@gmail.com. Last week, I was blown away by how many songs that I got and how many drop boxes. It's incredible how much great new music is out there, and I want to get my hands on all of it. You can find me at Twisted Rico on Instagram and Twitter, and also there's a Blowing Smoke Instagram page, which is still relatively new, at Blowing Smoke with TR. There's also Facebook, and we're everywhere, you know. So until the next time we say goodbye, this is Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo. Keep the rock and roll alive. Take it away, the charm's so pretty.